Welcome back to another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. As always, I'm your host, Dean Simon. And before we get into everything, please make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe. We're still on the road to 2,000 subs, so if that's a journey that you feel compelled to join, please consider pressing that big red button down below. And also turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on future Milwaukee Bucks updates. And one that we have to get to right now is that, yes, it is finally over. The Bucks have snapped a 7-game losing streak with a win against the Brooklyn Nets. And Danny Wolf for the Brooklyn Nets, who was one of my favorite players to watch in college basketball last year, went off for a career high 22 points, 8 of 16 from the field. He was just catching and shooting with no regard. Anytime the Bucks scored, they just came right back down, and it just happened to be a Danny Wolf catch and shoot three. But I guess if that's the way that the Nets are killing you, then so be it. You'll live with it. But the Bucks do end up pulling out a win in blowout fashion. They were up by 30 points on this Nets team, missing Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Thomas and all their actual scorers. They don't have that many of them to begin with, but those two key guys were missing as well, so it kind of just made the job a little bit easier. So yeah, the 7-game losing streak is over, but of course that 7-game losing streak had to happen when I said that it was going to be the biggest stretch of the season for the Bucks, that it would be a make or break stretch. And if they went 3-3 or 4-3 throughout that stretch from the Laker game to the Knicks game, that maybe you could see them doing enough to keep Giannis happy, or kind of give him a little bit of control when he comes back, and he could see, oh, they kept it at 500, or they kept it somewhat reasonable for me to continue trying to take this team to the playoffs. Maybe this is a good deal for me, and that they kind of held their own. But no, that was not the case. Giannis came back to a team that was 2 or 3 games below 500, but he powered the Bucks to a win in this one. One thing that I will say though about this game, while it does seem like it was perfect, nothing could go wrong, at least in the second half of this thing. In the first half, there were just a couple of different factors that I wanted to talk about where it seemed like there's definitely still room for improvement. Number one is that the Bucks need another solid wing defender. There's no way that they can keep going into these games trotting out Bobby Portis and Jericho Sims as a front court pair, but also expect them to defend out on the perimeter in open space. They just proved once again that they cannot do so, and that guys like Ben Saraf or Saraf, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He was just getting by Bobby Portis with reckless abandon, and getting to the basket and doing those kind of deceleration steps and things like that. And it seemed easy. It seemed like Bobby Portis was easy to get past. And same thing for Jericho Sims, not really in terms of his actual perimeter defense, not letting guys get past him, but just that it's impossible to ask a guy like him to close out on 3-point shooters. And we saw several times during this game, whether it was to either corner or whatever, that asking Jericho Sims to do this, like it doesn't really make any sense. And it just puts him in a vulnerable spot when that his matchup is a guy in many cases like Zaire Williams that can shoot the ball. And maybe they don't go into the game thinking that that's going to be his main matchup, but things get switched, and game plans kind of change based on that. And Jericho Sims ended up matched on him a couple of times, or at least more than you'd like to see. And that's how things ended up happening, where Zaire Williams was splashing threes over late contests from Jericho Sims. And yeah, Bobby Portis, it was just a tough watch, trying to watch him go against these, for their credit, the Nets, while they are not a fantastic team, they are definitely filled with young and athletic guys that can put the ball on the floor and get to the basket. And we saw Bobby kind of struggle with that. But we're not going to go too much on Bobby's perimeter defensive deficiencies. We're just going to move on, because Kevin Porter Jr. finally returned and scored 13 to go along with 6 assists. And it was just nice to see that it looked as though he felt completely confident in his shot the second he came back, and you wouldn't expect him to feel any different. But that first shot, that first 3 coming back from the top of the key, going down, and kind of seeing the smile on his face as he's running back down the floor, definitely a positive sign. And Ryan Rollins was pretty awesome yet again, by his side as well. So KPJ now coming back, you could already see how he was affecting the game in terms of his defense as well. But again, in the passing lanes, as we've come to see, that's where he really not makes his money, but on the defensive end, that's where he excels in passing lanes. And we saw him and Giannis kind of pair up for a couple of steals and breakaway layups and dunks. And if more of that can happen, I'm going to have a lot of faith in this team moving forward, because they needed another kind of disruptor out on the perimeter. When you got lineups of when it's just Ryan Rollins out there along with AJ Green, Gary Trent Jr., when Taurean Prince is healthy, Bobby Portis, and of the like, you need guys to be disruptors. And it just felt as though in the past couple of weeks that the Bucks haven't really had any of those kinds of caliber guys on the defensive end. But now KPJ coming back, of course he's a steady hand on offense, but also getting that bit of defense back where he can outstretch that hand and then it could lead into a 2-on-1 on the break and an easy bucket. You definitely need some of that if you want to be a competitive team, flat out. So KPJ coming back and offering what he did on offense, also paired with the nice signs that maybe he can kind of revitalize this defense. It's hopefully things are going to be looking up as the next couple of games commence, and KPJ can start to get even more into a rhythm. But he did look fantastic in his first game back. One thing that I did want to do, though, not to kind of rain on the parade, but through the past 8 games, so obviously the 7-game losing streak, and now this past win against the Nets, I wanted to look at the league ranks for the Milwaukee Bucks in just a bunch of different categories, because while it's easy to say, oh man, through their 7-game losing streak, they were bad in these areas, I just feel like they are just areas of the most concern, really, outside of it being through the midst of a 7-game losing streak. So the past 8 games for the Milwaukee Bucks, including that game against the Nets, 29th in scoring at 107.8 points. And then we'll just kind of go down the list. Dead last by a country mile in free throws made. It's like 12.2. And then the next team at number 29 is 15.2. Dead last in free throws attempted by a country mile, 29th in rebounding, and dead last in blocks. And this is a team, mind you, that of course they're just getting Giannis back for the past 2 of these 8 games. But for a team that has Miles Turner on it and 2 games of Giannis, is dead last in blocks per game. Of course, there's not really any kind of pivotal defenders at the rim on this team other than Miles Turner, except for Jericho Sims when he's feeling it, I guess, on the defensive end. But can I just be the one to say that I feel as though that's maybe a little bit embarrassing to be last in blocks when your star free agent acquisition is a guy that's a 2-time blocks champion? And this is just flat out a team that should, and this is a team that also has a lot of athletic guards that can easily rise up for blocks. Like, I think this past game, the Bucks had no, it wasn't the Knicks game. It was this past game, I believe, that the Bucks had 2 blocks in the entire game. One was from Miles Turner and one was from Kevin Porter Jr. So where is the shot blocking going to come from? If not from Miles Turner, the guy that you are heavily depending on to do so, then where will it? And again, these are stats that are heavily declining or low to begin with because of the losing streak. You figure that they're not going to be at the top of every stat list because because these are all games that they ended up losing. So it's not like these things aren't explainable, but I feel like a lot of these things are effort. Some in the way of like physical exertion, where it's physical effort in terms of the rebounding being second to last, in blocks being dead last, but also just effort in terms of putting in work when it comes to making and attempting free throws. And once you get to the line, if you get to the line, as the Bucks have not been prone to do, actually making those free throws. To be last in free throws made and near the last or dead last in free throw percentage and free throw attempts, it's just flat out not a good mix when you're towards the bottom of the league in both attempts and percentage. That means you're not getting to the line at all, and then you're barely capitalizing on the chances that you do get to go to the line. So it's not very good. And one thing, if there's anything really that I want from this team looking for or moving forward, is to just get to the line more. And that's how, like, if they get to the free throw line more, then they'll win more games where they shoot 42% from 3-point range instead of losing them in embarrassing fashion like they have been the past couple of weeks. So yeah, there's that. One last little fun thing I wanted to get to is that Giannis made an interesting kind of quote or had an interesting take on LeBron's scoring record, and that he feels as though in the next 4 or 5 years that he will overtake LeBron in all-time scoring, which I don't know how great Giannis is at math, and I've never have been, so I'm not necessarily putting myself on a pedestal here, but um Giannis just crossed the 21,000 point threshold the other night, and the gap between his scoring and LeBron's scoring total is more than the total points that he's scored already. He just reached 21,000, and then the gap between him now and LeBron still is 21,100 or 200 something. So he still would have to double up everything that he's done to this point in his career to reach LeBron, and LeBron is still playing to this day right now. So by this kind of math, if Giannis wanted to get there in the next 4 or 5 years, I saw that he would have to average somewhere around 46 points a game through the next 5 seasons, and that's considering if he plays all 82 games, no injury misfortune whatsoever. So of course, you like the delusional confidence. If there's one thing that you can count on for with regard to Giannis, it's that he will always be delusionally confident. But maybe this is a bit overboard. Not saying that Giannis can't eventually creep up to that kind of number, or that he can't really get himself to the top of said list, especially when over the past couple of years it seems like 30 points a game on 58 to 60% from the field, it seems like a shoe-in. But he would have to continue this kind of production for the next decade to really be in contention to actually take that record away from LeBron. So yeah, that's just that's just a very interesting statement there from Giannis. But again, you love the confidence. If there's anything that you can count on Giannis for, it is that. But anyways, that'll be it for me today. Thank you very much for tuning in to yet another episode of Bucks Latest presented by FanArch. Once again, I've been Dean Simon, and before you go, please leave that like, leave that comment down below, and leave that subscription, and also turn on those post notifications so you don't miss out on future Milwaukee Bucks updates. All right, I will see you guys in the next one. Go Bucks.